right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Business Support Series webinar. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Emma Minchevsky. I'm Communications Manager here at the Halifax Chamber, and I'm your host for this morning. One of my roles here at the Chamber is running our social media accounts, and it's always a struggle for us to balance our social dialogue, our sales aspects, and the important information we want to get out there. We're constantly reevaluating what we're posting, and we try to make sure there's value for our members in the content. That's what we're putting out there. Over the last year, it's been a lot of COVID-focused information, but now that events are on the way back, we want to let people know about those as well. We want to get some new members in here. Luckily for us, our guest here today is going to walk us through her social media strategies to create a strong social presence. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions for our presenter. When we get to the Q&A, feel free to type any other questions into the chat box. Feel free to post them throughout the session as well, and we'll answer them as time allows. Our presenter today is Anita Kirkbride, head Twirp at Twirp Communications and a previous Halifax Business Awards finalist. Anita is Halifax's leader in social media training and consulting. She trains entrepreneurs to undercomplicate and manage their own social media marketing. Welcome, Anita, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I haven't spoken at the Chamber for quite a while, and I'm just scrolling through the list of people who are here, and it's so interesting because I don't think I know anybody that's here. And when I go out into in-person networking events here in Halifax, there's always somebody in the room I know, and I'm looking at this list and I don't know anybody. So let me know who is here. Well, I mean, I see who's here, but let me know who you are and what your business is over in the chat, because I'd love to have some examples going through my head as I'm talking about this stuff. It's always helpful for me to know what businesses are actually in the room when I do that. So I'm here today to talk about putting the social back in social media, something that I see a lot in social media is people who come there thinking that it's all about sales. And I know as a business owner, we are concerned about sales. And as a business owner, our goal is sales and finances. But that doesn't mean that's our strategy for social media. So I want to talk to you today about how to be more social in social media, which will help you to build relationships. And it's the relationships that actually will lead to sales. Okay, let's see, it's not switching for me here. There we go. So why do we need to be social on social media? Well, the very first thing, and to put it quite bluntly, nobody wakes up in the morning excited to hear from a logo, a brand, or a billboard. Nobody wakes up and says, ooh, I can't, well, except maybe today on April Fools, you might wake up and say, ooh, I can't wait to see what the brands are posting today. Other than April Fool's Day, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to see what Starbucks posted today about their new products, or I can't wait to see what McDonald's is saying about their new product, or what Clearwater's posting about their fish, right? Nobody wakes up excited to hear about advertising, and they're not excited to see calls to action, which is why it's really important that we are more social on social media. If you go into social media and you ignore the whole social side of it, the building relationships, you're really missing the point and the abilities and functionality that social media can bring to your business. So let's talk about what is not social on social media. Sometimes it's really good to start with the don'ts. On social media, we don't want to pitch slap. Now, if pitch slapping is a new word to you, this is a word that my virtual assistant gave me. It's what happens when you connect with somebody for the very first time. You follow somebody on Twitter, you connect with them on LinkedIn. We get it a lot on LinkedIn. And the first thing they do is send you a pitch about their business. They haven't asked anything about you. They haven't done any research. They haven't even looked at your profile to see what it is that you do and whether or not you are a good fit for their services. A lot of times these pitch slaps are automated. So that is not being social, right? That's the antithesis of being social on social media. It's not good for building relationships. It's not good for building your reputation. It's not helping you. So no pitch slapping. Get to know the person on the other side. It takes a little bit more time, but I think actually, if you were to measure the amount of time you spend getting to know somebody and weeding out the businesses or the accounts or the people who aren't a good fit for you, you'd spend less time building relationships because you'd spend more time building it with the right people and less time automating and building with the wrong people. So let's get rid of the pitch slap. We also are not being very social when we broadcast and run. And what I mean by that is when you go to whatever social network you have decided to focus on and you just post something and leave it there and you take off. You go back to your work. You schedule everything to post out on your social media. You don't interact with people. It's all just broadcasting, right? Social media is not like TV or the radio where people can't talk back to you. On social media, they can be social with you. It's very interactive and they will want to talk to you if you give them the opportunity and if you engage with them. So no posting and running. We don't want to feel on social media like your account is just broadcasting to us, that you're just constantly trying to sell to us. And I lost my train of thought. I was going to say a third thing, but it's gone. Which leads me to auto posting. A lot of the time when we see an account that is really broadcasting and yelling at us and just giving us calls to action and sales all the time, a lot of times that account has auto posting set up. And I want to be really clear that auto posting and scheduling are two very different things. I like to talk about something called responsible scheduling. Responsible scheduling means that you are choosing the content that goes out. Now, most of us choose our own content, but there are programs out there that will allow you, say on Twitter, to just retweet things automatically based on keywords. Okay, that's auto posting. That's not going to do you any good. And things can slip through that you may not actually want to post. So responsible scheduling is when we choose the content that's going out. So we're actually putting our own eyes on that tweet, on that Facebook post, on that Instagram photo, on that article that we're sharing. We are choosing the schedule that it's going to be going out at, and we're choosing what's happening with it. If you're not choosing things about your content, that's auto posting. Auto posting is also when you set it up to automatically post from Instagram to Twitter, or Instagram to Facebook, or Facebook to Twitter, or LinkedIn. When you've got one account set up to automatically post everywhere else, that's auto posting. And there are some savings, some time savings that you can get by having some automations set up. But when you over automate things, it's not social at all. When you automate sending your Instagram pictures to Twitter, for example, the people on Twitter that follow you don't get the picture. They don't get to see the picture if you use that Twitter button. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves about people who use Instagram and Twitter is when they use that Twitter button on Instagram and the people on Twitter don't get to see the actual photo. So there are other automations you can set up to fix that. But when we don't get to see the photo, which is the actual content of that tweet from Instagram, we don't feel like you're being very social with us, right? We feel like sloppy seconds, to be honest, because we're not getting the content. We're just getting a, hey, you should come over to Instagram and get the content. So if you're using I want you to stop using that Twitter button on Instagram if you've been using that. And if you need an alternative, let me know in the questions. I will share the best alternative for you. If you are auto posting any other direction from any other account to any other account, then you really need to be careful that when you're setting that up, you're accounting for the differences in each of those networks. So if you are posting on Facebook and have that set to automatically go to your Twitter, where is that cutting off? Are you writing 500 characters on Facebook and having that cut off at 280 over on Twitter so that we don't get the whole story on Twitter? If you're writing it on Twitter and having it automatically go to your Facebook, are you leaving out a lot of details that you could include on Facebook because of that? So there are ways to get around this automation, and over automating your social media is definitively not social. Another thing that's not social is trend hijacking. So today is a big trend. Today's April Fool's. We're going to see lots of April Fool's posts today. Maybe not as many as we would in years past because there's a bit of a backlash against April Fool's this year. But if you are looking in the trends on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and you see a hashtag that's trending and you just try to jump on that hashtag without doing proper research and planning, we call that trend hijacking. And you don't want to do that because sometimes that can go really, really poorly. So if you're trying to jump on a trend that's happening, whether it's on TikTok, it's a type of video, or are there any accountants in the room? If there's any accountants in the room, do you know what an accountant means on TikTok? Because it's something very different. So there are things like that, that if you are not doing your research and you're jumping on this TikTok trend of using a particular background sound about being an accountant, you could be giving people a very different impression who know what that means from the original trend. You're all going to be going to TikTok looking up what's an accountant today. I can just see it. Don't get lost down the rabbit hole when you get there. So be careful about jumping on current trends because that can be definitively not social. The other thing we don't want you to do, because it's really not social, is dumping your TV ads or your print ads into social and thinking that's good enough. Oh, it's good enough for TV. It's good enough for the magazine. It's good enough for the Chronicle Herald. That doesn't mean it's good enough for social media. Somebody's already Googling what an accountant is. Yes. Social media is very different than what we would do in traditional media. And it is about being social. It's about having conversations. Traditional media can't really foster those conversations in the moment. So you have to adapt your TV ads. You have to adapt your print media, your photos, your articles for the social network that you're focusing on. So if you're doing any of these things now, you're really not being super social on social media, and we want to fix that. One of the ways that we can fix that is by getting to know people. So let's concentrate on actually building relationships on social media. When you go to a Chamber of Commerce networking event, you don't just go around handing out, well, I hope you don't, hand out your business card and then leave, right? That's not building relationships. When you go to a networking event in person, or even some of the online networking events, you're getting to know the people who are in the room with you. You're asking questions, you're having conversations, you are relating your life and your experience to things that they're saying. You might talk to somebody in the room about the fact that they ride horses, and maybe you make a connection over the fact that you both have a horse hobby. And you ride at different farms and you compete in different places, or your kids compete. You're building that relationship, but they're still going to know what it is that you do for business or work. And you will be top of mind when they want an accountant, a real accountant, because they say, oh yeah, I was talking to that person and they were an accountant. let me call them. In fact, yesterday I recorded an episode of my upcoming podcast with a local lawyer, Corinne Boudreau. Some of you may know her. And we were talking about this and saying, why is it so important that you share personal stuff on social media? And I don't mean personal, intimate stuff, but share some personalized content. Number 5 here. It's important because it does help people get to know you and build those relationships outside of work. It's kind of like the water cooler, right? If you were in a big building and you went to the coffee shop or the water cooler, you might chit chat about other things outside of work. She told me yesterday that she had a client who needed some legal work, and they had been, she shares on her social media that she plays hockey in a women's league. She plays guitar and she sings in a band, also the same people as her hockey team. But this person who needed legal work said, I talked to several different lawyers and I've decided to come and work with you because you play hockey. And I know that sounds weird. Like, why would you choose your lawyer because they play hockey? Well, it's not because they play hockey. It's because you have built that relationship. It's because you got to know them and you can relate to them and see that they're a human being and you have that relatability factor. Okay. So getting to know people and sharing that personalized content. Now, what kind of things are personalized content? You don't have to share your bikini photos from your beach vacation. Okay. I certainly don't share that, but I will share a happy family selfie on the beach. All of us usually fully clothed. I will share, experiences at local businesses while I'm going around. I will share a few photos from a big vacation just to let people know that, hey, 1, I'm still alive. 2, I'm a successful entrepreneur who can take a vacation. 3, to normalize taking vacations. We need to normalize entrepreneurs actually taking time away from their businesses. And 4, just to share some personal content. I'm a stepmom, I'm a grandmother, so I do occasionally share pictures of a grandson, believe it or not. He's 6. I'm married, I have 2 teenage girls. Like, I want to share parts of this to show that, hey, I'm actually a human with a real life out there. And if any of you are already following me on Twitter, and if you've been following me on Twitter for, I don't know, since December, you will know that I have had, on top of pandemic issues, we've had personal family issues going on with my 2 daughters. And I shared that on Twitter because I needed backup and I needed support. And Twitter came through with that. I had people suggest options, suggest treatments, suggest self-care. I had all kinds of support and suggestions just by sharing something that was actually very personal on Twitter. And people get to know me because of that. Number 2, no spamming. Spamming is very similar to pitch slapping. You don't want to just pop into somebody's private messages and start spamming them with content about your product or service. Okay, don't start sending me menus for your restaurant if I haven't said I'm interested in seeing a menu for your restaurant. Don't start sending me private messages or emails about your product asking me to review it just because. Like the email spam that I do get a ton of email spam from my website. They at least find an article on my website and say, hey, we found this article. Could you review this product and include it? I don't have time to review all the products that come across my email, but at least it's relevant to me in most cases. A lot of times it's not. So no spamming. Don't just constantly put out your calls to action. Don't tag people in photos that they're not in or aren't relevant to them. That's something that we see on a lot of the networks. People tagging me in a photo just so I'll come interact with it to help them build their reach. No, that's spam. We don't want to do that. Or when I was managing social media for a local magazine, there were people who wanted to be featured in the magazine who would constantly tag the magazine in their Instagram posts. And I would be constantly removing that tag because that picture is not in our magazine. That creator, that person is not in our magazine. So why would we allow that to be on our profile? So really, you're ruining your reputation to an extent if you're doing these kinds of things, because doing that did not make me want to offer that person editorial content in the magazine. Not that the thing is, I wasn't even the person who got to make that decision. So she was annoying me, and I wasn't going to pass her name on because of that. So find the right channels, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't just spam accounts, because often you've got somebody handling that account like me who doesn't make the decisions about where the business goes or who gets featured in a magazine or who gets featured on the account. Sometimes I don't even get to make those decisions. So make sure that you are building relationships in the right way, and make sure that if you're trying to get noticed by somebody, make sure that you're trying to get noticed by the right person at that organization. Step number 3 in building relationships, always offer value and be helpful. I'm going to combine these two because being valuable and being helpful are very similar. Give content on your social media that is valuable. Don't just sell us things. Tell us how we can use them. Show us examples of what your clothing from your boutique will look like on an actual person who lives in Halifax, not just some rail thin model who lives in New York. Show us how to use your ingredients to prepare food. If you make local honey, or you make local spice rubs, or you make local spirits, give us ideas. Around Christmas time, just before Christmas, I saw a recipe for a drink called, I think it was called the Queen Bee, from the local distillery. And now I've forgotten the name. If anybody knows the name of the distillery down on Agricola Street, I can't think of their name. Compass? Is it Compass, I think? They put up everybody said Compass. They put up a recipe for something called the Queen Bee. It was a purple drink in a martini glass. It talked about being sweet because it had honey in it. And I said, oh my gosh, I need to try that. And so I went to the liquor store that day and I bought Compass gin. And then I went searching, and I actually had to go down to Agricola Street to get the bitters to put in it because that was the only place I could get bitters. So I supported that local business because they put something up on their social that was useful to me. I was going through a really rough time. I wanted a new drink to help me relax in the evenings. And honestly, that worked. It wasn't a call to action. It was a recipe, and it was useful to me at the time. So offer value and be helpful. Sometimes you can just go on social media and just answer people's questions and be helpful. This morning, somebody on Twitter's my favorite in case you haven't guessed. Somebody asked on Twitter, what was the name of that organization in downtown Halifax that was for young professional people? They couldn't remember the name. I was pretty sure it was Fusion. So I wrote back to her. I replied, I said, I think that's Fusion. Yeah, that was the one she was looking for. So I helped her answer her question. I mean, it's so simple to pop in and answer questions when you can. And that, again, helps you to build relationships as a person that other people on that network don't mind interacting with, because you're not constantly trying to sell to them. So if you can't be constantly selling on social media, what can you do? Just checking the time here. First, you need to realize that sales is an outcome. It is not your goal in social media. Okay, you shouldn't, in my opinion, say my goal for social media is to sell $100,000 in product this year. because in a lot of cases, you can't track those sales directly to your social media efforts. You can track them to paid ads if you have online shopping, but a lot of other things are really difficult to track in social media, especially for small businesses, because we, including myself, often don't take the time to put into place all of the things we need in order to properly track those sales. It's really hard to track what the dollar value in sales would be for Compass Distilling from posting that recipe on social media, because they might have tracked my link click back to their website, but they wouldn't have been able to track the fact that I went to the liquor store and bought their gin. They might be able to track the fact that I posted about going to the store to get the bitters, but even that's probably not tracking properly, right? So it can be really difficult to track your ROI on organic social media efforts. So let's stop thinking about social media goals in terms of sales. So if it's not sales, what are the strategies and tactics and goals for social media? I've come up with 12 different ones. 12 different ways you can use social media. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can, or a photo, if you want to keep this and think about this and ruminate on it later. Here are 12 ways that you can use social media that are not sales. And I encourage you to pick one or two, maximum 3 of these to focus on. If you focus on these and you're consistent and you're leading with building relationships, the outcome will be sales. But if you go into social media with a sales mindset, your content becomes very sales oriented, which is not social. So these strategies can help you to be more social on social media, which will lead to the outcome of sales, but it is a long game and it's not a direct line. Obviously, advertising/marketing. You're still going to talk about your products. You're still going to post recipes for the queen bee, right? You're still going to post that. That's advertising, because it said in the recipe that you should buy a certain type of Compass gin, and it said you should get Compass orange bitters, but it wasn't a call to action to come buy. It was different. One that I really like that a lot of people don't think about is simple networking. You can use just about any of the social networks to network. You can go on Twitter, you can participate in Twitter chats, which are all about just networking and having conversations. You can go on there and just answer people's questions and be helpful. That's networking. You can go on any of the networks, and when somebody says, I'm looking for a referral to X, I need a plumber, I need a financial consultant, I need, I'm trying to go back and see what the businesses were that were here. You need a CPA, you need a operations and efficiencies consultant. If somebody's out there posting that and you've been on that network building relationships, somebody is going to tag you. Somebody will tag you because they know you're there and they know what you do. If you're on there building relationships and helping other people get what they need to succeed, right? It's all about helping people build their businesses too. When we think about networking, I'm sure if you've attended the Networking 101 presentation for the Chamber, they've told you networking is not about don't focus on telling people about your business so much as helping other people find what they need. Yes, you're going to tell people what you do, of course, but you're going to spend more time listening and helping than talking about you, right? It's the old adage, listen twice as much as you talk. Customer service is another one that for bigger businesses, if there's anybody in here who's more of an enterprise kind of size business, you may have social media profiles, social media networks that are purely for customer service. If we think about the large banks, if we think about Eastlink, Bell, they all have a customer service focus on their social media. Yes, they share content that's informational, etc., but they also are focused on customer service. If I have complaints, I go to Twitter and I tweet at TD, or I tweet at Bell or Eastlink. They will respond. Their customer service people will respond, and they will get things resolved. So customer service could be a strategy for using one network, or it could be built into all of your social profiles. Now, the next two are education, and there's two different ways that you can use social media for education. Education internal is you getting educated by using social media. What I mean by that is you can go out on any of the networks and connect with other organizations that educate in your niche, or other people, or conferences, or magazines, or research houses, journals. You can go find education through social media in ways that you can't by simply Googling. Every search engine is different. So if you Google education opportunities in your niche on Google, you're going to get one set of results. But if you start looking up your industry and niche on Twitter, you're going to get a very different set of results, and you might find different people and different organizations to engage with. And the cool thing about something like Twitter or maybe Instagram is that when you talk to an expert on Twitter, chances are, if they're using Twitter well, they will respond to you. You can talk to Gary Vaynerchuk on Twitter and he'll respond. You can talk to any big person on Twitter, maybe not celebrities, but people who are in your industry that are go-to people, and they'll probably respond. Education external now is you using social media to educate your audience. So this is about the kind of content that you provide. Are you providing content that educates people on how to reduce their plastic usage, on how to be more sustainable in the kitchen, or be more sustainable as a travel when they travel, when we're allowed to travel again? Do you want to reduce your carbon footprint when you travel, or do you want to make sure that your money stays in the local communities when you travel? So you can educate your audience on things by the type of content that you provide, which is also helpful, right? And it's not a call to action. Of course, you can use social media in different ways for market research and competitive research. You can research a new market. You could go look at what's happening on social media, on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook in a new city, and see what's happening in that market. Or you could go follow your competitors on any of the networks and see what they're doing, what's up and coming, what are they planning, how are they using the networks. Both of those involve no posting, right? That's just research. And a lot of people don't even think about that. But sometimes I hear, oh, I have a Twitter account, but I only use it for reading things. I don't actually post. I just follow certain magazines, certain journals, certain websites so that I have a reading list. That's perfectly okay. That's not really being social, but it's a great way to use some of the networks that you might have access to. Market research, competitive research, right now going on Clubhouse, if you've got an Apple phone, Vanessa, going on Clubhouse might be a really good way to get some market and competitive research, because you can go on there and see what's happening. And maybe your competitors are like me and they're Android and they can't get on there. So you might be able to get some advanced research done in there. The other thing about Clubhouse is that you can go and talk to people who might not talk to you in other networks, because that's what Clubhouse is about. It's about having conversations, just like Twitter. Advocacy is one that doesn't relate to a lot of businesses, but you can go to social media for the purposes of advocating for change. It could be policy changes, government changes, legislation changes, or you could just be advocating for societal change. Think about Black Lives Matter. Think about Stop Asian Hate. Think about climate change, right? We have people on all of the networks who are using their social profiles to advocate for change. And the type of content that you put out, if you are advocating, is very different than if you are marketing, than if you are networking, than if you are trying to educate, although there's some crossover there for sure. One that I see, let me grab a little drink here. One strategy that I see a lot in the small business community, and this is one that I employ myself, is to become the expert in your industry, right? The kind of content that you will put out, the way in which you will use social media, if you are trying to become known as the expert, is very different than if you're simply networking. If you want to be known as the expert, you need to be putting out your own original thoughts about things. You can't be a thought leader if all you do is share everything else from other people. You've got to be putting out your own thoughts on things. That's how you become an expert. So your content becomes very different. You blog, you create videos, you share pithy status updates and little stories that show your expertise. You can also do that by helping people when they have questions that relate to what it is that you do. Of course, there are lots of accounts out there that are there purely for entertainment purposes. If we want to look at brands that do this well, we can look at Skittles, Oreo. I might even put no-name brands in the entertainment category. Wendy's certainly has lots of entertaining content that they do. Comedians, actors, voiceover actors, a lot of those types of companies are on social being entertaining. They don't really need to put a call to action to go buy Skittles today, but they can get in front of their audience by having some entertaining content. Of course, lead generation is a strategy. If you want to generate leads, I want you to remember that social media can be a lead generator. It's not really your sales generator. It can be, but that's not where we're focusing. Lead generation content looks like calls to action. It looks like download my size infographic. If you are always wondering what size you need to put on social media for a graphic, download this guide and you'll always have the right information. It looks like giving freebies. It looks like free webinars. It looks like anything that gets people's email into your system. So there's lots of that going on, but most of that stuff is valuable content. It's education. It's building your expert status. It's not just a sale. You can also use social media to garner media attention. Now, this one's a little harder because you don't want to just start spamming the media for them to share your story. But if you follow the media, if you engage with them about the stories they are writing, if you ask them questions, if you talk to them, then when you do have a media-worthy story, you will have built that relationship. I could write on Twitter or Facebook or even text message or call probably half the reporters in Halifax if I had a story I wanted to be told. And they would at least read what I'm saying. I'm not saying I could guarantee coverage, but they would read it because they have called on me many times and I interact with them on the networks, and they've brought me on their shows. So we have this relationship. And if I need something done, I at least feel comfortable asking for a little bit of reciprocity because we've helped each other out that way. So building those relationships starts on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, where reporters are looking for stories and leads. I got interviewed by Tim Bousquet simply because of when the police were in town doing some raids and they didn't warn the school, they didn't warn the CPA school that the police were going to be across the street with their guns and everything. I happened to be there that day, saw what was going on. I mentioned that on a thread on Twitter, and two reporters, Tim Bousquet and I forget who the other one was from CBC, called me to talk about what I saw. Nothing to do with business, but now I have a relationship with those reporters. So sometimes sharing that personal stuff, engaging with comments and threads on the different media, on the different social platforms, can help you to build that. And of course, you can always go on social media to collect data. And what I mean by this is running surveys, having polls, asking questions, getting people to vote on things. Think about, should I wear this or this? Should I use this headshot or this headshot? Which product would you like us to introduce next? This pizza or that pizza? King of Donair today is announcing that they're having make at home Donair sauce. Maybe they did a poll to say, should we have make at home Donair sauce? Yes or no? How many people would mail this out to their friends out west? I know that's an April Fool's joke, but I'm just using it as an example. You could have a poll to ask for which should we do next? Which webinar should I provide next? Which template do you want next? Which outfit do you want us to show you how to style next? Which recipes do you want? You can collect a lot of data just by asking questions on your social media. So there's the different strategies. I think, is that actually 13? I think I added one without realizing it. 13 strategies that you can use on social media that will help you to be more social without focusing on sales. I clicked on something, hold on here. There we go. Other highly social content, things that will get people engaged. Live streaming video. If you want to be social, try live streaming something. Interactive polls especially in Instagram stories, but also in Facebook stories, asking people to vote, asking them to use the sliders, asking them to ask you questions, asking them to answer questions, all of that kind of stuff. TikTok style videos, highly entertaining content. And if you are laughing at me suggesting that you consider TikTok, I want you to know that people I follow on TikTok, I follow business consultants, I follow a financial advisor, a gynecologist, a dentist, a physiotherapist, a chiropractor. I follow a lot of professionals who are doing TikTok style content and educating people. So there's definitely room on there for professional content. And stories. I mean, both Instagram stories, Facebook stories, the content box, but I also mean telling stories. I've interspersed a few little stories in here today that I hope will help you remember these strategies. But telling stories is one of the most important things you can do, because stories help us remember what we were talking about, remember what we were learning. And if you're struggling with stories, there are lots of opportunities out there on the internet to learn about how to tell stories and how to build your story brand. In fact, there's a book called Story Brand by Donald Miller that we should probably all read. I've got it there and I started it and didn't finish it. All right, so before we get into questions, if you need more from me, at the very top of the chat, I put all my contact information if you want to grab that. But I also have a free training session coming up on April 12th called the No BS Social Media Blueprint. It's 1 hour a day for 5 days to build a very simple social media plan for yourself, completely free. It's in our Facebook group. That is the link to register for it, twirp.ca/ it's not knobs, it's no BS. You can also just join my Facebook group, Social Media for Twirps, if you want a place where you can come and ask questions and get advice, not just from me, but from other consultants who are in there and other small businesses who are using social media every day. And if you need personal help, I do VIP days, and I also have the Flossom League Social Media Academy for Small Business, which is a monthly training program that you can join. And if you want to know about those, I am happy to talk to you offline about that. All right, so I'm ready for your questions. And I think I'm just like 1 minute past, so I did good.
Anita, you nailed it. Absolutely great timing. And I was furiously taking notes. Yeah, pop those questions in the chat box and I'll get us started here. This is something that I've been talking a lot about with my social media friends. What content are people looking for during this COVID era? I know we're heading towards recovery now, but the messaging has changed a little bit. So what are the trends you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely entertainment content. I mean, TikTok took off at the beginning of this pandemic. People are looking for an escape. They're looking for entertainment value. At the same time, there was the backlash over April Fools today. People don't want to see pranks. So they want to see real content. They want to know that the person running the business is human and relatable. So if you can share things that help you relate to your audience, that's what's going to start to move the needle.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we've started doing some more behind the scenes stuff this year when we had a couple of our events and people really enjoyed that. I'm still terrified to go live, but I'm working up the courage.
Hey, you're live right now. So
Oh, that's a good point. It feels so different because I can't see anybody. I guess that is the same with social media. Okay, I'll give it a try.
yeah.
That's my goal for 2021.
One of,
Um,
just before you do the next
okay.
question, one of the things that I tell people all the time is you can't get better at going live until you start. You have to take that first step, right? And nobody is going to be perfect at doing a live the first time they do it. But you can't get better. You can't get too close to perfection until you do it and you learn what went wrong the first time and you improve the next time. So if you're thinking that live would be really good for you or your business or your organization, just do it. Just start. Get that first one over and done with, and then move on and get better. I'm not a huge Gary Vaynerchuk fan. I've already mentioned him once, but he actually has posted from like 10 years ago the very first video that he did for Wine Library. And he talks about the fact that that was his first video and look how horrible that video was and where he is today, right? So you've got to start and you've got to move forward, and we have to get past this idea that things can be perfect the first time.
That's true. We had a speaker at Wonder Woman, Anne-Marie Flynn, and she said we're recovering from perfection, and I love that. So that's
Yeah, absolutely. And Anne-Marie is actually going to be she's the first episode of my podcast, which is coming out next week. And we had a great chat
exciting.
about perfectionism. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, we'll definitely send that over and we'll share that out. Dennis is asking, are some social media apps better than others for certain types of businesses?
Yeah, I definitely think so. What I would say is figure out where your audience is already hanging out and start there. So if you're a pizza shop, your audience is hanging out on Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok right now. Like that's where the majority of your audience is, the Generation Z and the millennials. Yes, moms and dads my age want pizza for their kids and everything. But if you really want to move the needle in pizza right now, there's a huge opportunity in those networks to do that. But that takes a very different kind of content, right? So yes, certain platforms are better for certain kinds of businesses. If you are in HR, I mean, you might post jobs on Twitter and Facebook, but really LinkedIn is your sweet spot for that. If you're trying to talk to founders of businesses and startups in Silicon Valley, LinkedIn is probably going to be your best bet. If you want to talk to, I'm trying to think of some good examples. If you, I don't have it down here. If you want to sell, this is a product that came out of Fredericton and I saw it on a Facebook ad, and I've never bought something from a Facebook ad as fast as I bought this silly little product. It's called the, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's this blue ball that sits on the wall. It suctions to the wall and you can use it to massage your back. Vertiball. It's called Vertiball. and they're based in Fredericton actually, and I didn't even know that when I bought it. But if you're trying to reach the 45 and up age group of people who are working at their computers all the time and have back problems, Facebook worked for that. I bought that in 5 minutes. So it's a matter of figuring out where your audience is already hanging out and then making the commitment to go there first, because it's a lot easier for one person to learn how to go use that network than to try and drag everybody from, say, Instagram over to Twitter because you prefer Twitter.
Very true. I love this Vertiball product you just mentioned. I'm Googling that right after this.
It's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Amazing. I'm really guilty of falling for the Instagram and Facebook ads, but they know what I like. They've been paid to know what I like, so that's fine. We started a new marketing campaign this year, and I struggled with how many times I should be able to post it. It was just a really plain and simple campaign. We worked with the Well on it. We were really pleased. We had kind of some COVID sayings like properly distanced, but right by your side. And I wasn't sure how many times people wanted to see that. What do you think? Because it wasn't straight sales. It was kind of a more awareness campaign, but we struggled with the strategy a little bit. What are your thoughts on how many times you can post an ad?
Yeah, it depends on the platform. If you want to have something appearing in people's feeds constantly on Facebook, for example, then you do it as an ad. And same for Instagram, really. You do it as an ad, because if you're constantly posting the same image in the news feed on Facebook and Instagram, people are going to unfollow you. But if it's an ad and they're tired of seeing it, they can just say that they want to stop seeing that ad, and they're still following you, so they'll still get your other content. Twitter's a little different because the shelf life of a tweet is something ridiculous like 3 minutes. And you can post more frequently on Twitter. When I have a new blog post coming out or a new podcast episode or something like that, I have been known in the past to post up to twice a day on Twitter for the first 2 weeks about that piece of content. Not exactly the same tweet twice a day, every day for 2 weeks, but usually I'll create a roster of teasers about the content and then I rotate through them. So I might create 3 or 5 separate tweets and then go through those for 2 weeks, once or twice a day. I think you can do that on Twitter. You might be able to do that on stories on Instagram, but putting that kind of stuff in your news feed all the time, it does get a little repetitive and people don't like that.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I want to come back to promoted versus organic, but we have another question here that says, you don't recommend using something like Hootsuite?
I do. Yeah. Hootsuite is a scheduling program. So as long as you are choosing the content and you're choosing the schedule, that's okay. There are other programs out there that I won't name that you just say, oh, I want to share anything about social media. And then anything that comes into their system and gets tagged with social media goes out on your account. That's the kind of stuff I don't want you to do. I don't want you to use the Twitter button on Instagram. But Hootsuite's a great product, although they're really gutting their free. If you're on their free program, they're gutting their free program next week. So watch for that. Buffer is another good one for small businesses. There's nothing wrong with scheduling out your content, especially if it's content that needs to go at a certain time, like restaurants. I have no problem with a restaurant sitting down on Sunday or Monday and scheduling out their lunch and dinner specials to hit a certain time every day of that week. But what I don't want you to schedule are things like engagement questions. So if you're going to post something and you want people to actually answer you in the moment when they see that question, don't schedule that for a time when you're not going to be there to answer, because people don't like that. You want to engage with them. So scheduling, yes. Automation, carefully.
Really good answer. Thank you. We live in that world now where we want an immediate answer. So it's very important that you're there and available.
Yeah,
when
Absolutely.
content is being posted. We have another question from Bernadette. She says, is there a true demographic for who should be on TikTok? Although I know you mentioned many that you follow.
So if we look at the demographics of TikTok, it's still very young. I think it would have changed a lot over the pandemic, and it's certainly growing. What people often don't think about with TikTok is the number of people who are there watching it and not creating content. I watch a lot of TikTok. I haven't posted a single video myself. So it's a matter of figuring out whether or not your audience is there. And yes, right now the statistics tell us it's a younger demographic and that it hasn't penetrated the entire population as much as, say, Facebook. Whoops, I forgot to turn my phone off. It would be a matter of trial, right? But honestly, some of the people, we have local people here in Halifax who have millions of followers on TikTok. Millions. It can happen here. And, that if you're a global business, that's an opportunity for you. If you're a local business, and there's a Dairy Queen franchise in somewhere in Ontario, I think, that has a couple million followers because the 16-year-old daughter of the family owner started making TikTok videos about how she decorates their ice cream cakes. People just want to see behind the scenes content that they don't get to see anywhere else. And she literally was just putting a camera on her chest somehow, showing how she would decorate the ice cream cakes. And now she's a viral TikTok star. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there if you are a person who doesn't mind being a little bit silly, because the culture on TikTok is definitely a little bit silly. If you don't mind making a different type of video, because you're not going to put your YouTube video on TikTok. That's just not how it works. And if you're willing to be really reactive, really spontaneous, and go with the flow, there's a lot of opportunity there. And I am starting to tell some clients, this is where you need to go next. In fact, I told Corinne Boudreau yesterday on the podcast that she needs to start a TikTok, and I think she's going to do it. And she's a lawyer, so.
I love that. Okay, well, I'll be your first follower for sure. We have another question. Is it unprofessional to not accept a friend if they don't fit your ethics or if you just don't want them on your feed?
Definitely not. No, I'm pretty lenient. You said friend, so I'm going to assume you mean Facebook. I'm very lenient now on Facebook because promoting my online training programs, I want people to see who I am outside of just my business profiles. And it makes it easier to connect with people in private messaging on Facebook if you're friends. So I'm fairly lenient, but I block and delete people with no regrets. No regrets. If you start posting conspiracy theories on your Facebook, I will just delete you because I have no interest in that. If you send me inappropriate pictures or spam, block and delete. And if I knew that about the person when they were asking to connect, then I wouldn't connect. Yeah, I don't have any regrets about that. It's your feed. Control that how you want.
Agreed. I had that same fear for a long time, thinking like, what if I run into this person? And I have run into people who said, why didn't you follow me back on Instagram? And it is the most uncomfortable conversation in the world, but it's worth it because I don't want you on my feed.
Yeah.
I have one more question here. If anyone else has any more, we can do one more question and then we'll wrap up. Talk a bit about the difference between paid and organic content.
Well, it's really come to the point where you have to invest for your success on social media. Everybody really needs to have some kind of budget for paid advertising, especially on Facebook and Instagram now. And sometimes people really don't want to pay for something that they've had for free for so long. The problem is if you went to the Chronicle Herald or you went to one of the local radio stations or one of the local magazines, you're not going to get free content from them, right? You're not going to have a free platform from them. You would have to pay for your platform on any of those traditional media. And the social networks are really kind of just catching up to that. We've had paid ads on them for many years now, but we've got to catch up our thinking as well. That if you want reach on Facebook, you're going to have to pay for it. You can still build your profile for free. You don't have to do ads. I'm suggesting that you really consider doing some ad work on those platforms to reach outside of who is seeing your content on a daily basis. There are ways to do it, and they can be very successful if they're done properly.
Okay, that's perfect. That's a great way to end off. Thank you so much, Anita. I took furious notes. I hope everyone else did as well. I'm sure we could go on for the rest of the week, but we'll wrap it up here. The Chamber is hosting the first annual State of the Province next week with Premier Rankin. That's happening April 7th at 11 a.m. We're hosting it virtually, and it's all going to be free thanks to our partners at National Public Relations. So we hope you can attend. You can head to halifaxchamber.com/events to sign up for that. This webinar was recorded and will be available to all attendees shortly on YouTube. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great long weekend, hopefully for some of you, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.